ते रमणाभिधानमनुजक्षेमाय जागक्षितौ चित्रास्तां गिरिजां कपीठनिलयं जानन्ति देवं गुहम् ओङ्काराक्षमभागतः भगवते वाणीमनोहरोदरस्य गुरुतां प्राप्तो दिधीगौरवात् सुब्रह्मण्यकनिष्ठता प्रतिगतः सर्वाधिकस्त्वं गुणैः यत्पूर्वं श्रुतिपाददर्शनाद्यस्तमयं ज्योतिर्मयं शाश्वतं स्थानं प्राप्य विराजते विलमता विज्ञानमुन्मोलयन् पश्यन् विष्णुवीरमन्वतयो विष्णुस्य वादे परः तस्मै श्री रमणाय लोकगुरवे शोकस्य हन्ते नमः प्रसन्नादिकमभिलोकितं रमणते दग्ने त्वदुते कृतं रमणजन्मिना मयि भवान् गुरुः अभिदाशयस्तममहानुरुः जगदहं परस्फुरति मे त्रयं तदभिसङ्गिता तदपवितं दजं तदुपदे ततो दरति संविदा मयि विरञ्जजा तदनभाभिदा अहमियोऽन्तरस्तममलं हृदि अनुभवे ममो तमविपादति अकरुणागुणस्वामिदां पते हृदयते ततः सहजभैवते अवतनुज्वल जनकविद्युता अवधृता दता दतनिभासता अफलितं मनः त्वमविभोमृता त्वमधितं ततं विनदितो मुदा भुवनभूपते भगवतः कृते भवसि पाचको जमवताम्बते नरपशोनिमानहमिताडयन् परशिवोदनं विजनुषेपजन् निराडिनकेवलं वचोभिः करुणाकाङ्गविलोकितैश्चरीणां हृदये प्रचरन्ति वर्धयन्तं भगवन्तं रमणं गुरुं नमामि भवजननिधिं गाहं चिरादरसारसान् पदजलरुवद्वं तद्दीपं मृतां तव सम्प्रति रमण भगवन् कल्याणानां निकेतनपायिनः तदजययादित्यैर्भक्तानवाङ्गविलोकितैः गिरिजननीस्तन्नं दद्याक्षिशोर्पदगापतिः गिरिवरुवति क्रोधं कुर्यात् ततोरवनं कुतः गिरिवरुषावादाद्यत्वं प्रियं दिनसंशयं भ्रमशतमनाभूताले चेतनन्तभवं कथम् गिरिराजते पूर्णाशान्तिस्वधाकरदोदरे स्थिरबुद्धरजो पूर्णाशक्तिर्विशोधजलार्किणोः हृदयकमले नित्यानिष्ठापहित्यतरप्रभे रमण भगवन् को वा मौली समस्तवभूतले देवी शक्तिविजं दृशोऽस्तुतजलध्वान्तक्षजादाकिनी देवी श्रीविजमम्बुजाक्षमयि धीमत्रे धरस्वच्छते देवी ब्रह्मवधूजयं विनिगते व्याहारगूढापदा विश्वासां च महानुभावरमणत्वां सौतकप्रागतः सोऽहं जातो रमण भगवन् पादयोस्तेजविष्ठो यद्यप्यस्मिन् भावितमये शक्तिरास्ये प्रवृत्ते तोर्यस्येव ज्वलितमनसो दोलकान्नातिशक्तिं विश्वस्याद्वियां तवपवनोभीतदुःखं तथापि तद्भागधेयमतमानमनेकमौनिवासाञ्जितं प्रसवतः खलुलोहितस्य अङ्गीजगान भगवान् रमणो महर्षिरन्ये विदस्यतिमं पवित्रस्थलेषु शान्तिं निदान्तमधिका परमासदक्यर्वैराग्यमद्भुततमं करुणाकृतान्ता ज्ञाननिरस्तकुहरं मधुरं च वृत्तं लीलाञ्जदर्शनमयं रमणो महर्षिः नारदं हर्षपतर्भाषिष्ठो रमणं गुरुं चत्वारिंशन्मिते पद्ये सन्दान्तं सुरवाणिजं करुणापूर्णसुधाब्धे कबलितघनविश्वरूपकिरणारण्य अरुणाचलपदमात्मन् अरुणो भवचित्तगञ्जसुविकासाय तेयगुणाचल सर्वं भूत्वा स्थित्वा प्रणीतमेतच्चित्रं प्रत्यहमित्यात्मदया तस्य शुभोस्ते वदन्ति हृदयन्नाम अहमिति पुरा जातीत्यन्वेष्यान्तः प्रविष्टजाश्च मनधिजा अवगम्य संरूपं साम्यच्चरुणाचलत्तेन जीवाधौ चक्वा विषयं वाक्यं रुद्धप्राणेन रुद्धमनसां तत्त्वां योगी दीयति वरुणा जगत्ते महीयन्ते तेजर्पितमनसा त्वां पश्यन् सर्वं तवागतितया सततं भजते रण्यप्रीत्या दजयत्यरुणाचलत्ते सुखे मग्नः श्रीमद्रमण महर्षे दर्शनमरुणाचलस्य एव गिरा पञ्चकमायागीतौ रत्नन्वितमोपनिषदं हि ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ तन्नो मित्रश्चं वरुणः तन्नो भवत्तर्जमा तन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः तन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मादि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि सतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतो तद्भक्तारमवतो अवतु माम् अवतु भक्तारम् ॐ शान्तिः 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 शीघ्रां आख्यास्यामः वर्णस्वरः मात्राबलं तावदन्तारः इत्युक्तश्चेनेकाध्यायः सहनौ यतः सहनौ ब्रह्मवर्चसम् असामसंविदायामुपनिषदं आख्यास्यामः पञ्चस्पतिकरणेन अधिलोकमधिज्योतिरमधिमिद्यमधिप्रजमध्यात्मम् तामहासंहितानित्या चक्षते अथाधिलोकम् पृथिवीगोर्ध्वलोकम् यमुरत्तरलोकम् आकाशस्सन्धिः वायुस्सन्धागम् इत्यधिलोकम् अथाधिज्योतिरम् अग्निर्गोर्ध्वलोकम् आदित्यमुत्तरलोकम् आपस्सन्धिः वैद्युतस्सन्धागम् इत्यधिज्योतिरम् अथाधिविद्यम् आधार्यगोर्ध्वलोकम् अन्तेवास्मित्तरलोकम् विद्याबन्धिः प्रवचनगं सन्धानम् इत्यधिविद्यम् अथाधिप्रजम् मातागोर्ध्वलोकम् पितोत्तरलोकम् प्रजाबन्धिः प्रजननगं सन्धानम् इत्यधिप्रजम् अथाध्यात्मम् अधराहनगोर्ध्वलोकम् उत्तराहनोत्तरलोकम् आसन्धिः दिक्पासन्धानम् इत्यध्यात्मम् महासंहिताः स एवमेता महासंहितां व्याख्याता भेदा सन्धीयते प्रलयावधुभिः ब्रह्मवर्चसेनान्नाद्येन सुवर्गेण भोगेन यश्चन्दसा विषमो विश्वलोकः छन्दोऽध्याध्यमदा असम्भवो वा तमेन्द्रो मेधया शृणोतु अवतस्य देवधारणो भूयासम् शरीरं मे वितषटम् जिह्वा मे वधुवर्तमा कर्णाभ्यां गौरविश्वभम् ब्रह्मणकोदोदिमेधया विदितः कृतं मे गोपाल तावहन्ति विदम्बाना कुर्वाणादेरमात्मनः आदावं दिवमगावच्च अन्नपाने च सर्वदा ततो मे त्रिजवावः तोमसां वचभिः सहस्राः आवाजन्त ब्रह्मचारिणः स्वाहा इमाजन्त ब्रह्मचारिणः स्वाहा प्रमाजन्त ब्रह्मचारिणः स्वाहा प्रमाजन्त ब्रह्मचारिणः स्वाहा क्षमायन्त ब्रह्मचारिणः स्वाहा यशोजमेधानि स्वाहा तेधानिपस्कतोदानि स्वाहा तन्ताभगप्रविदानि स्वाहा तमाभगप्रविशः स्वाहा तस्मिन् सहस्रशाखे निभगानं वजमृजे स्वाहा यथा प्रवधायन्ति यथा माता अर्जरम् एवं मां ब्रह्मचारिणः दातराजन्तु सर्वतः स्वाहा प्रतिभेदाधिप्रमाभाधिप्रमापद्यस्व वोर्भवस्व भवितिवा एतास्तिस्रां व्याहृदयः तादावहत्वैकान्तदुःखीं महाजमस्य प्रवेदयते महरिति तद्ब्रह्म न आत्मा अङ्गान्यन्या देवताः भोरिति दिवा अजल्लोकः भुवनित्यन्तरिक्षम् त्वमदित्यसौ लोकः महरित्यादित्यः आदित्ये नवावदन्वे लोका वहीयन्ते भोरिदिवा अग्निः भुवनिति वायुः त्वमदित्यादित्यः महरिति चन्द्रमाः चन्द्रमदावावदन्वाणिज्योतिकम् विभजीयन्ते भोरिदिवारितः भुवनिति सामानि त्वमदिति जोगुंषि महरिति ब्रह्मा ब्रह्मणावावदन्वे वेदा वहीयन्ते भोरिति वै प्राणः भुवनित्यपानः त्वमदितिं व्यावः महरित्यन्नम् अन्ये नवावदन्वे प्राणा वहीयन्ते तावा एता चतस्रचतुर्धा चतस्रचतस्राव्याहृदयः तायो वेद तवेद ब्रह्मा तद्वे वै देवा बलिमा वहन्ति तय एतो अन्तर्हृदय आकाशः तस्मिन्नयम् पूर्णो मनोमयः अमतो हिरण्मयः अन्तरे ददातुके य एतस्तरदिवा भलम्बते ते इन्द्रयोनिः यत्रादौ केशान्तो निवर्तते यपोष्यशीर्षकपाले भोरित्यग्नौ प्रतिष्ठति भुवनिति वाजौ भुवनित्यादित्ये महरिति ब्रह्मणि आप्नोति स्वराज्यम् आप्नोति मनसत्पतिम् वाक्पतिर्दक्षपतिः विज्ञानपतिः एकस्ततो भवति आकाशशरीरम् ब्रह्म सत्यात्तः प्राणानामम् मन आनन्दम् शान्तिसमृद्धमृतम् इति प्राचीनयोग्योपास पृथिव्यन्तरिक्षम् द्यौर्दिरोगान्तरदिशाः अग्निर्वायुरादित्यश्चन्द्रमा नक्षत्राणि आपओषधयो वनस्पतय आकाश आत्मा इत्यधिभूतम् अथाध्यात्मम् प्राणो व्यानो बाणगुदानस्तमानः चक्षुश्रोत्रम् वाक्के कर्मभागुन्दग्स्नावास्यमज्जा एतदधिविधा जनिषितबोधते पान्तम् वाजितगुम् सर्वम् पान्ते देवपान्तग्नस्पृणोतीति कोऽपि ब्रह्मा कोऽपि चेतगुम् सर्वम् कोऽपित्येतदनुगतिः त्वमा अभ्योष्टामयेत्याश्रावयन्ति कोऽपि दिशापाणि गायन्ति कोऽपुंसोऽपि चिरत्राणि जगुंसन्ति कोऽपित्यध्वर्यो प्रतिघनम् प्रतिगृह्णाति कोऽपिति ब्रह्मा प्रसूति कोऽपित्यग्निहोत्रमनुजानाति कोऽपिति ब्राह्मणप्रवक्ष्यन्नाह ब्रह्मो वा अप्रभानीति ब्रह्मैव वा अप्नोति तदन्तस्वाध्यायप्रवदनेत तत्यन्तस्वाध्यायप्रवदनेत तमन्तस्वाध्यायप्रवदनेत 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 अग्निजस्तस्वाध्यायप्रवदनेत अग्निहोत्रन्तस्वाध्यायप्रवदनेत अतिथयन्तस्वाध्यायप्रवदनेत मानुषन्तस्वाध्यायप्रवदनेत प्रजातस्वाध्यायप्रवदनेत प्रजनन्तस्वाध्यायप्रवदनेत प्रजादित्यस्वाध्यायप्रवदनेत सत्यविजसत्यवचाराधीतनः तपरिजिनवो नित्यपौनशक्तिः स्वाध्यायप्रवदने देवे जनाको भवोद्गर्गः तद्धितमस्तद्धितमः अहम् नक्षत्रते दिवा एतत्पृष्ठम् गते दिवा ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजदेवस्वमसमर्पि द्रविणकुम्भवर्चतम् त्वमेधा अमृतोषितः इति त्रिजङ्कारवेदानुवचनम् एतमनोच्चादार्योन्देवादिनमनुषाति तत्तम् वद धर्मञ्चर स्वाध्याया प्रमदः आधार्याय प्रियम् फलमागत्य प्रजातन्तम् माद्यवच्छेसीः सत्यान्नप्रवदितव्यम् धर्मान्नप्रवदितव्यम् कुशलान्नप्रवदितव्यम् आर्यदेवो भव अदितिदेवो भव यान्यनवद्यानि कर्माणि तानि देवितं यानि नोदितराणि यान्यस्माकं सुचरितानि तानि तदोपास्यानि नोदितराणि एके चात्मच्छेदागुंसो ब्राह्मणाः तेषां दयादनेन प्रस्फुटितव्यम् श्रद्धयादेयम् अश्रद्धयादेयम् श्रियादेयम् श्रियादेयम् धियादेयम् संविदादेयम् अतिरिक्ते कर्मविचिकित्सावृत्तविचिकित्सा भाग्यात् एतत्र ब्राह्मणाः संवर्जिनः युक्ता अयुक्ताः अलोक्ताधर्मकामास्युः यथा ते तत्र वर्तेरन् तथा तत्र वर्तेथाः तथा ज्ञाख्यातेषु एतत्र ब्राह्मणाः संवर्जिनः युक्ता अयुक्ताः अलोक्ताधर्मकामास्युः यथा ते तेषु वर्तेरन् तथा तेषु वर्तेथाः एष आनेषः एष उपलेशः एषावेदोपनिषत् एतदनुशासनम् एवमुपासितव्यम् एवमुचैतदुपास्यम् सन्नो मित्रश्चं वरुणः सन्नो भवन्तर्जमा सन्न इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः सन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मावादिकम् ऋतमवादिकम् सत्यमवादिकम् तन्मावीत् तद्वक्तारमावीत् आवीर्माम् आवीद्वक्तारम् ॐ शान्तिः 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 सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमत्वमाविद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 ब्रह्मविदा आप्नोति परम् तदेताभ्यर्था सत्यं ज्ञानमनन्तं ब्रह्म यो वेदलिखितं गुहायां परमे व्योमन् तोऽस्मते गन्धां कामांसः ब्रह्मणा विभज्यते तस्माद्वा एतस्मादात्मन आकाशस्तम्भूतः आकाशाद्वायुः वायोरग्निः अग्निरापः अर्धपृथिवी पृथिव्या ओषधयः ओषधीभ्योऽन्नम् अन्नाद्पुरुषः तवा एष पुरुषोऽन्नरसमयः तस्यैष मे भजिरः अयं दक्षिणः पक्षः अयमुत्तरः पक्षः अयमात्मा इदं पुच्छं वसिष्ठः तदप्येन स्वागो भवति अन्नाद्वै प्रजा प्रजागन्ते याकाशपृथिवीविश्रुताः अधो अङ्गेनैव जीवन्ति अथैतदपि यन्त्रं ततः अन्नकं विभूतानाञ्जेष्ठम् तस्मात् सर्वो रसमुच्यते सर्वं वै ते समाकुर्वन्ति येदं ब्रह्मोपासते अन्नकं विभूतानाञ्जेष्ठम् तस्मात् सर्वो रसमुच्यते अन्नाधूतानि जायन्ते जातान्यन्वेदवर्धन्ते अद्यते चितभूतानि तस्मादन्नं तदिष्टदयिति तस्माद्वा एतस्मादन्नरसमयात् अन्योऽन्तरात्मा प्राणमयः तेनैतपूर्णः तवादेन पुरुषविध एव तस्य पुरुषविधताम् अन्वयं पुरुषविधः तस्य प्राणये विजिनः यानो दक्षिणः पक्षः अपानमुत्तरः पक्षः आकाश आत्मा पृथिवीमुच्छं विशिष्टः तदग्नेन स्वागो भवति प्राणं देवा अनुप्राणन्ति मनुष्याः पदवज्जने प्राणो निभूतानामायुः तस्मात् सर्वायुषमुच्यते सर्वमेव सायुज्यन्ति ये प्राणं ब्रह्मोपासते प्राणो निभूतानामायुः तस्मात् सर्वायुषमुच्यते इति तस्यैतदेव जानीत आत्मा यः पूर्णस्य तस्माद्वा एतस्मात् प्राणमयात् अन्योऽन्तर आत्मा विमौनयः तेनैव पूर्णः तवा एष पुरुषमिध एव तस्य पुरुष पूर्णविधताम् अन्वयम् वर्णविदः तस्य यजुने भजिरः ऋग्दक्षिणः पक्षः कामोत्तरः पक्षः आदेश आत्मा अथर्वाङ्गिरदः पुच्छं प्रतिष्ठा तदक्तेन श्लोको भवति यतो वाचो निवर्तन्ते अप्राप्यपदसादः आनन्दम् ब्रह्मणो विद्वान् न बिभेति कदाचनेति तस्यैतदेव जानीत आत्मा यः पूर्वस्य तस्माद्वाये तस्मान्मनोमयात् अन्योऽन्तरात्मा विज्ञानमयः तेनैत पूर्णः तवानेत पूर्णमिध एव तस्य पूर्णविधताम् अन्वयम् पूर्णविदः तस्य श्रद्धैमतिरः इदम् दक्षिणः पक्षः तस्योत्तरः पक्षः योग आत्मा अहपुच्छम् प्रतिष्ठा तदप्येन श्लोको भवति विज्ञानै यज्ञम् तनुते कर्माणि तनुतेऽपि च विज्ञानम् देवाः सर्वे ब्रह्मज्येष्ठमुपासते विज्ञानम् ब्रह्मचेद्वेद तत्पाचेन्न प्रमाद्यति शरीरे पात्मनो हित्वा सर्वान् कामान् समस्कृत इति तस्यैतदेव जानीत आत्मा यः पूर्वस्य तस्माद्वारे तस्माद्विज्ञानमयात् अन्योऽन्तर आत्मानन्दमयः तेनैव पूर्णः समावेद पूर्णविध एव तस्य पूर्णविधताम् अन्वयम् पूर्णविदः तस्य प्रियमे भजिरः मोदो दक्षिणः पक्षः प्रमोदमुत्तरः पक्षः आनन्द आत्मा ब्रह्ममुच्छम् प्रतिष्ठा तदप्येन श्लोको भवति संगेवत भवति असद्ब्रह्मेति वेदचेत् अस्तिर्ब्रह्मेति चेत् सन्तमेनन्दतो विदुरिति तस्यैतदेव जानीत आत्मा यः पूर्वस्य अथातो न प्रश्नाः उदा विद्वानमम् लोकम् प्रेत्य कश्चन गच्छति आहो विद्वानमम् लोकम् प्रेत्य कश्चित् सर्वस्म्युत भूतोकामयता बहुस्याम् पदा येजेति ततवोदप्यता ततवस्तप्ता इदम् तत्त्वमभिदता यदिदम् किञ्च तत्सृष्ट्वा तदेवानुप्राविशत् तदनुप्रविश्य तच्चर्चा भवत् यदुक्तञ्च यदुक्तञ्च यदजनञ्च यदजनञ्च विज्ञानञ्च विज्ञानञ्च सत्यञ्च तदञ्च सत्यं भवत् यदिदं किञ्च तत्सत्यविद्या दक्षते तदप्येन श्लोको भवति असवा इदमग्र आसीत् ततो वै तदजायत तदात्मानग्रस्वजमकुरुत तस्मात् तत्त्वपदमुच्यते इति यद्वैतः सुपदम् अदो वैतः तदज्ञैकेवायम् लब्धानन्दे भवति ओर्गेवान्यात् यदेक आकाश आनन्दो न स्यात् एतज्ञेवानन्ददाति यदा वैतनेतस्मिन् दुःखेन जने भयम् प्रतिष्ठाम् विन्दते भयङ्करो भवति यदा वैतने तस्मिन् उदरमन्तरम् कुरुते अथ तस्य भयम् भवति तत्तेव भयम् विदुरो बन्धानस्य तदप्येन श्लोको भवति तदेवास्माद्वादः प्रपते भेदो वेदितोर्जः भेदात्मानग्निश्चेन्द्रश्च प्रत्यर्धावति पञ्चमरिति एवानन्दस्य वीमागुण्डा भवति शिवास्य साधुजभाध्यायकः आदिष्ठोदिष्ठोपदिष्ठः तस्येदम् पृथिवी सर्वा विद्दद्धवो नास्यात् स एको मानुषानन्दः एते तम् ततमस्तप्ता आनन्दो ब्रह्मेदुर्जजागात् आनन्दाध्येव गम्यमानि भूतानि जायन्ते आनन्दे न जातानि जीवन्ति आनन्दं व्रजन्तमिदं विदन्तीति तैषा भार्गवीवारुणी विद्या परमे यो मन्प्रतिष्ठिता य एवं वेद प्रतिष्ठति अन्नपानन्नादो भवति महान् भवति प्रजया पशुभिर्ब्रह्मवर्चसेन महान् कीर्त्या अन्नविन्द्यात् तद्व्रतं प्राणो वा अन्नं शरीरमन्नादं प्राणे शरीरं प्रतिष्ठितं शरीरे प्राणः प्रतिष्ठितः तदेतदन्नमन्ये प्रतिष्ठितं तदेतदन्नमन्ये प्रतिष्ठितं वेद प्रतिष्ठति अन्नपानन्नादो भवति महान् भवति प्रजया पशुभिर्ब्रह्मवर्चसेन महान् कीर्त्या अन्नं परिचक्षेत तद्व्रतम् आपो वा अन्नं ज्योतिरन्नादम् अंशुज्योतिर्प्रतिष्ठितं ज्योतिष्यापः प्रतिष्ठिताः तदेतदन्नमन्ये प्रतिष्ठितं तदेतदन्नमन्ये प्रतिष्ठितं वेदं प्रतिष्ठति अन्नपानन्नादो भवति महान् भवति प्रजया पशुभिर्ब्रह्मवर्चसेन महान् कीर्त्या अन्नं बहुपर्वीत तद्व्रतं पृथिवी वा अन्नम् आकाशो नादः पृथिव्यामाकाशः प्रतिष्ठितः आकाशे पृथिवी प्रतिष्ठिता तदेतदन्नमन्ये प्रतिष्ठितं तदेतदन्नमन्ये प्रतिष्ठितं वेद प्रतिष्ठति अन्नपानन्नादो भवति महान् भवति प्रजया पशुभिर्ब्रह्मवर्चसेन महान् कीर्त्या न कञ्चन वदतौ प्रत्यादक्षेत तद्व्रतं तस्मान्निराकयादविदजावत्पन्नं प्राप्नुयात् अराध्यस्मान्न विद्यादक्षते एतद्वै मुखतो अन्नगुं राद्धं मुखतो स्वा अन्नगुं राध्यते एतद्वै मध्यतो अन्नगुं राद्धं मध्यतो स्वा अन्नगुं राध्यते एतद्वा अन्ततो अन्नगुं राद्धं अन्ततो स्वा अन्नगुं राध्यते एवं वेद एवरिति वाचि भोगक्षेवरिति प्राणापानयोः कर्मेति हस्तयोः गतिरिति पादयोः विमुक्तिरिति पादौ इति मानुषेत्वभाज्ञाः अथ दैवीः कृत्तिरिति भिट्टौ बलमिति भिद्यति यजरिति पशुषो ज्योतिरिति नक्षत्रेषु प्रजातिनवतमानन्दनित्यपस्थे सर्वविद्याकाशे तत्प्रतिष्ठेत्यबाधीत सुतिष्ठावान् भवति तन्महरित्यबाधीत महान् भवति तन्मनरित्यबाधीत मानवान् भवति तन्नपरित्यबाधीत संयन्ते वै कामाः तद्ब्रह्मेत्यबाधीत ब्रह्मवान् भवति तद्ब्रह्मणः परिमलनित्यबाधीत परिजेनं विजन्ते द्विरन्तस्तभद्राः परिजे प्रियाभ्रातृव्याः तयष्टादं पुरुषे यष्टादावादित्ये त एकः तय एवं विद अस्माल्लोकात्रेत्य एतमन्नवयमात्मानमुपसङ्क्रम्य एतं प्राणवयमात्मानमुपसङ्क्रम्य एतं विजमात्मानमुपसङ्क्रम्य एतं विज्ञानवयमात्मानमुपसङ्क्रम्य एतमानन्दविजमात्मानमुपसङ्क्रम्य इमान् लोकान् कामान्नैकावलोक्य न सञ्चरन् एतत्सामगायन्नास्ते Om Shanti 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 Anoranidhan Mahatopanidhat Gubhadhan Nihitasakantoha Tavakratam Vasyati Vedadosa Dhatu Pratala Anmadipanabidam Sabda Prana Prabhavam Vitasma Sabda Chirasvavidha Sabda Jitvaha Sabda Jive Lokale Jagadante Prana Gubhadaya Nihita Sabda Sabda Adasamudra Gidajata Sarve Sundante Rimbhava Sarvarupaha Adajaveta Odajajodata Ajalevita Bhota Chattachantarasma Brahma Devalam Vadaveka Vedam Vipradaam Vajinom Vigaram Teno Vidhara Jaspati Sarvananagam Sopa Pavitra Vacheti Devam Ajamekam Lojita Jukla Gandam Bhaktim Vajam Janajantikam Sarupam Ajokeva Jatamadam Visetejaha Atiram Bhaktavokamajo Anyah Agam Sarkajitatvadurantavekta Sadhota Vedhijatachituro Nadate Nishadvaradatatajyo Madatabja Gojadajaja Advijaratam Brigate Ghitam Nividyate Ghitavasya Jodan Ghrite Sato Ghitavavasya Dhama Anushvadavavahavatajasvasvaha Ghitam Rinavavakvigamyam Tamudjadonyam Madhavagam Udaradapagam Kanatamamritatvavagate Ghitajjanamagoikyayajattajikva Devada Mamatajjanavihi Ayannabha Prabrahama Gate Dhakyanijakye Dharaya Manavovire Upabrahma Janavachasyamananjanasrangavame Gaura Etaje Chattarivinghatayo Asyavada Vedekate Saptagattavo Asya Tadhamabdho Vinamaralaviti Mahodevo Madhyagam Aviveda Tadharitam Bhajagargujyamanam Kavidevado Bhatamandavindam Indra eka kundan eka jana vedane gagyatpadadanittatakto yo devana amnadapam punata jetadijo rudro maharishi hirannagarbham pasvadajavaanagum tano devasya bhadhatvita sanyagatto yasmat parannavaravantaginjajatbhangani yonajjayo jigatyate rikshati vastabdho divijatthatte gatte vedam purnam gurde nagarvam nagarvarana prajadadane natjage dike amritattavanajo pare ganagandriki tanguradam vibrajade tajjatayo vijanti vedanta vidyagajanajjata sannadayoga jatajattadhatattaha he brahma loke dhaparam takale paramatattari mancham nidharve Tadram Nivapam Parame Samodayat Pundarikam Bulavajjagagvistam Tatravidakram Gagatam Vidogastasvinijadam Tattaduvadidavyam Yomedalo Sarabhroto Vedante Tapratishitaha Tasya Pravidirinasya Jappadasya Maheshwaraha.
Here lies the heart. Mercedes de Acosta, a Spanish-born American, made only a 3-day visit to Shri Ramana in November 1938. She was at the time a Hollywood socialite and scriptwriter for films who was passing through both middle age and a series of disappointments in her career, life, and marriage. Near the end of her eventful life, she wrote an autobiography, which was placed in the United States by Raynal and Company, Inc. in 1960, and was titled, Here Lies the Heart. In 1962, 24 years after she met the Maharishi, she sent the book to Shri Ramana, inscribing it as an offering to Bhagavan. On the first page of the book, the formal printed dedication reads, To Bhagavan Ramana Maharishi, the only completely egoless, world-detached, and pure being I have ever known. The search in secret India had a profound influence on me. In it, I learned for the first time about Ramana Maharishi, a great Indian sage and saint. It was as though some emanation of this saint was projected out of the book to me. For days and nights after reading about him, I could not think of anything else. I became, as it were, possessed by him. I could not even talk of anything else. Nothing could distract me from the idea that I must go and meet this saint. From this time on, although I seek to speak too much about it, the whole direction of my life turned toward India and away from Hollywood. I felt that I would surely go there, although there was nothing at the time to indicate that I would. Nevertheless, I felt I would meet the Maharishi, and that this meeting would be the greatest experience of my life. I had very little money, far too little to risk going to India, but something pushed me towards it. I went to the steamship company and booked myself one of the cheapest cabins on an Indian ship, the SS Victoria, sailing from Genoa to Bombay toward the beginning of October. In Madras, I hired a car, and so anxious was I to arrive in Tiruvannamalai that I did not go to bed and traveled by night, arriving about 7 o'clock in the morning, after driving almost 11 hours. I was very tired as I got out of the car in a small square in front of the temple, Arunachaleswara temple. The driver explained he could take me no farther. I turned toward the hill of Arunachala and hurried in the hot sun along the dust-covered road to the abode about 2 miles from town where the sage dwelt. As I ran those 2 miles deeply within myself, I knew that I was running toward the greatest experience of my life. When dazed and filled with emotion, I first entered the hall. I did not know quite what to do. Coming from strong sunlight into the somewhat darkened hall, it was at first difficult to see. Nevertheless, I perceived Bhagavan at once, sitting in the Buddha posture on his couch in the corner. At the same moment, I felt overcome by some strong power in the hall, as if an invisible wind was pushing violently against me. For a moment, I felt dizzy. Then I recovered myself. To my great surprise, I suddenly heard an American voice calling out to me, "Hello, come in." It was the voice of an American named Guy Haig, who originally came from Long Beach, California. He told me later that he had been honorably discharged from the Navy in the Philippines and had then worked his way to India, taking up the study of yoga when he reached Bombay. Then he had heard about Shri Ramana Maharishi and, feeling greatly drawn to him, decided to go to Tiruvannamalai. When I met him, he had already been with the Maharishi for a year, sitting uninterruptedly day and night in the hall with the sage. I moved near Bhagavan, sitting at his feet and facing him. Guy was right. Not long after, this Bhagavan opened his eyes. He moved his head and looked directly down at me, his eyes looking into mine. It would be impossible to describe this moment. I'm not going to attempt it. I can only say that at this second, I felt my inner being raised to a degree. Perhaps in this split second, I was no longer my human self, but the self. Then Bhagavan smiled at me. It seemed to me that I had never known before what a smile was. I said, "I have come a long way to see you." There was silence. I had stupidly brought a piece of paper on which I had written a number of questions I wanted to ask. I fumbled for it in my pocket, but the questions were already answered by merely being in his presence. There was no need for questions or answers. Nevertheless, my dull intellect expressed one. "Tell me, who shall I follow? What shall I follow? I have been trying to find this out for years by seeking in religions in philosophies and in teachings. Again, there was silence. After a few minutes, which seemed to me a long time, he spoke. You are not telling me the truth. You are just using words, just talking. You know perfectly well whom to follow. Why do you need me to confirm it? You mean I should follow my inner self, I asked. I don't know anything about your inner self. You should follow the self. There is nothing or no one else to follow. I asked again, what about religions, teachers, gurus? If they can help in the quest of the self, but can they help? Can religion, which teaches you to look outside yourself, which promises a heaven and a reward outside yourself, can this help you? It is only by diving deep into the spiritual heart that one can find the self. He placed his right hand on his breast and continued. Here lies the heart, the dynamic spiritual heart. It is called Hridaya, which is located on the right side of the chest and is clearly visible to the inner eye of an adept on the spiritual path. Through meditation, you can learn to find the self in the cave of this heart. It is a strange thing, but when I was very young, Ignacio Zulago said to me, all great people function with the heart. He placed his hand over my physical heart and continued, see, here lies the heart. Always remember to think with it, to feel with it, and above all, to judge with it. But the enlightened one raised the counsel to a higher level. He said, find the self in the real heart. Both, just at the right moment in my life, showed me the way. People would say to Bhagavan, I would like to find God. His answer was, find the self first, and then you won't have to worry about God. And once a man said to him, I don't know whether to be a Catholic or a Buddhist. And Bhagavan asked him, what are you now? He answered, I am Catholic. He then said, go home and be a good Catholic, and then you will know whether you should be a Buddhist or not. Bhagavan pointed out to me that the self is timeless. But, he said, in spite of ignorance, no man takes seriously the fact of death. He may see death around him, but he still does not believe that he will die. He believes, or rather feels, in some strange way, that death is not for him. Only when the body is threatened does he fall a victim to the fear of death. Every man believes himself to be eternal, and this is actually the truth. This truth asserts itself in spite of man's ignorant belief that the body is the self. I asked him how to pray for other people. He answered, if you are abiding within the self, there are no other people. You and I are the same. When I pray for you, I pray for myself. And when I pray for myself, I pray for you. Real prayer is to abide within the self. This is the meaning of Tatvamasi. Thou, that heart. There can be no separation in the self. There is no need for prayer for yourself or any person other than to abide within the self. I said, Bhagavan, you say that I am to take up the search for the self by Atma Vikara. I ask myself the question, who am I? May I ask, who are you? Bhagavan answered. When you know the self, the I, you, he, and she disappear. They merge together in pure consciousness. To write of this experience with Bhagavan, to recapture and record all that he said, or all that his silence implied, is like trying to put the infinite into an egg cup. One small chapter cannot in any way do him justice or give an impression of his enlightenment. And I do not think that I am far enough spiritually advanced, if at all, to try to interpret his supreme knowledge. On me he had, and still has, a profound influence. I feel it presumptuous to say he changed my life. My life was perhaps not so important as all this, but I definitely saw life differently after I had been in his presence. A presence that just by merely being was sufficient spiritual nourishment for a lifetime. It may have been that when I returned from India, undiscerning people saw very little change in me, but there was a change, a transformation of my entire consciousness. And how could it have been otherwise? I had been in the atmosphere of an egoless world, detached and completely pure being. I sat in the hall with Bhagavan 3 days and 3 nights. Sometimes he spoke to me. Other times he was silent. It did not interrupt his silence. Often he was in samadhi. I wanted to stay on there with him, but finally he told me that I should go back to America. He said, there will be what will be called a war, but which in reality will be a great world revolution. Every country and every person will be touched by it. You must return to America. Your destiny is not in India at this time. Before leaving the ashram, Bhagavan gave me some verses he had selected from the Yoga Vasishtha. He said they contain the essence for the path of a pure life. Steady in the state of fullness, which shines when all desires are given up, and peaceful in the state of freedom in life, act playfully in the world, O Raghava. Inwardly free from all desires, dispassionate and detached, but outwardly active in all directions, act playfully in the world, O Raghava. Free from egoism, with mind detached as in sleep, pure like the sky, ever untainted, act playfully in the world, O Raghava. Conducting yourself nobly with kind tenderness, outwardly conforming to conventions, but inwardly renouncing all, act playfully in the world, O Raghava. Quite unattached at heart, but for all appearance acting as with attachment, inwardly cool but outwardly full of fervor, act playfully in the world, O Raghava. I sorrowfully said farewell to Bhagavan. As I was leaving, he said, you will return here again. I wonder, since his physical presence is gone, I wonder if I shall. Yet often I feel the pull of Arunachala, as though it were drawing me back. I feel the pull of that sacred hill, of which he was so much a part, and where his mortal body lies buried. Bhagwan Ramana Maharishi died on April 14, 1950. He had said, I am going away? Where should I go? I am here. By the word here, he did not imply any limitation. He meant rather that the self is. There is no going or coming or changing in that which is changeless and universal. I should not have regarded his death as a blow. How could I lose him? How could one lose anyone? How can one lose that which is eternal? It is only in the first shock and gripped in the illusion of death that one grieves for the physical presence.
The Bhagwan Shri by Krishna Bhikshu. Our family was in some way or other always
associated with religion and spiritual searching. Bhagwan Shri Shukla Venkata Sastri, the husband of my paternal aunt, had asked some of the questions recorded in the Ramana. When I was a child, I often used to go to his house, and there I saw the first time the photo of Bhagwan Ramana and read Ramana Gita and other early brochures. I went to Arunachala for the first time with Sri Ramana. We had our food in the town and then went to the ashrama. In those days, there was a very little there, a hut for Bhagavan and other over his mother Samadhi. Bhagavan had just finished his food and was washing his hands. He looked us intently. Did you have your food? He asked. Yes, we had it in town. You could have had it here, he replied. I stayed with him for 3 days. He made a great impression on me. I considered him to be a real Mahatma, although his ways were very simple. Most of the cooking was done by him in those days. The ashrama lived from hand to mouth, and usually only rice and vegetables were prepared. When I was about to leave, I asked Bhagavan, kindly show me a good path. What are you doing now? He asked. When I am in the right mood, I sing songs of Tyagaraja and I recite the Holy Gayatri. I was also doing some pranayama, but these breathing exercises have upset my health. You had better stop them, but never give up the Advaita Drishti. At that time, I could not understand his words. I went to Benares for a month, returned to Pondicherry, and spent 5 months there. Wherever I would go, people would find some fault or other with me. You are too weak, not fit for yoga. You do not know how to concentrate. You cannot hold your breath. You are unable to fast. You need too much sleep. You cannot keep visions. You must surrender all your property. Only Bhagavan asks for nothing, found fault with nothing. As a matter of truth, there was nothing in me that entitled me to his grace. But it did not matter. It did not matter with Bhagavan. He wanted me. My goodness, it was enough to tell him I am yours and for him to do the rest. In that way, he was unsurpassed. The strange people he gathered around him, but those who gave themselves to him and trusted him and did his bidding were overwhelmed by immense solitude and kindness. In 1930, I visited Ramana's home for the second time and stayed for a month. Our life was very simple at that time. I would get up early each morning, have my bath near the well at Valithitham, prepare sacramental food on a small stove, and start by sitting the lingam over Bhagavan's mother Samadhi. Chinnaswami helped in the chanting. Bhagavan would make himself generally useful. He would talk quite freely with us every night after food. They would ply him with questions on philosophy and metaphysics. In the evening, he would sit on a wooden cot near the well and gaze at Arunachala in deep silence. His face would glow with an inner radiance, which would appear to increase with the deepening darkness. We were sitting all around him, either silently or singing some song. Alamilama would sometimes sing from Tirupugad. The silence and peace of those hours was quite remarkable. At night, after dinner, all the inmates of the ashrama would collect around Bhagavan, and then he was our own, telling stories, answering questions, dispelling doubts, laughing and joking. We never knew how late it was until Madhav Swami would go behind Bhagavan's back and give us signs that it was time to allow Bhagavan some rest. Devi Narasimha Swami took up in those days the task of writing a book on Bhagavan's life and was collecting materials for his work from devotees. The first draft of the book was ready and the author gave me it to read. The idea came to me that a similar book should be written in Telugu. I got Bhagavan's permission and using Narasimha Swami's manuscript for an outline, got the Telugu version written within a month. After that, whenever there was some court holiday and I had enough money for a railway ticket, I would come from Ramana every day. Everybody, including Bhagavan, used to say, Krishna has come. And there was always a warm welcome for me. I asked him once, you told me to repeat the Gayatri. It is too long. Also, I am expected more its meaning and to meditate on it. Who asked you to bother about the meaning and all that? I have only asked you to see who is repeating the Gayatri or who is the Japi, was his kind reply. On the other hand, he did not limit his teaching to one question, who am I? He invariably adjusted his advice to the needs of the devotee. He would say, sooner or later, the question, who am I, will have to be faced. All that leads to this question is good. By itself, nothing else is fully effective. For self-knowledge comes only through self-inquiry. But other methods purify the mind and help it to see its own limits. When the mind comes to the end of its resources and stands baffled before the unanswerable question, then a higher power takes charge of the mind and the self stands to it, the real, the wonderful. Once an old woman came to the ashram. She always carried with her a framed picture of Bhagavan Narayana, and she would worship it on every occasion. She asked Bhagavan whether she was right in doing so. Bhagavan replied, without name and form, on what is one to concentrate? What are you doing with your heart and soul is just right for you. One night, there were only one or two persons in the hall. Madhav Swami was massaging Bhagavan's leg. A gentleman from Kakinada asked Bhagavan permission to massage his leg. Bhagavan did not reply. The man repeated his request, saying, at home I am daily praying to Bhagavan, and now I have a chance to serve him. Suddenly Bhagavan thundered, you had all the chances of serving me at home. Why did you come here? The man became quite frightened and could not speak. Thus Bhagavan taught us not to make a show of our devotion. Nobody could guess about the way Bhagavan would meet people. The high and mighty of the land would not get even a blank look, while some insignificant walking wanderer would become the object of his concentrated attention for hours and days. On the other hand, eminent people would sometimes be taken up by him and given the immense blessing of being the center of his interest. Once Pranavananda Swami came to the ashrama, he was utterly exhausted. He sat on the steps of the temple and could not move any further. Bhagavan was told about it. He came out at once, sat at the feet of the Pranavananda Swami and started rubbing his legs, saying, you have a long way to walk, Grandpa. Your leg must be paining you very much. The old Swami protested in vain. Bhagavan had his way and massaged the Swami's feet. At food time, Bhagavan would ask to be served very little, and he would carefully clear the plate of the last grain of food before getting up. Although he never asked us to do the same. I asked him if we clear our dining leaves so scrupulously, the dogs, cats, monkeys, rats, and ants will stop. Bhagavan answered, well, if you are so compassionate, why not feed the animals before taking food yourself? Do you think the relish you are scrapping? Once a visitor said, I have been coming to you, Swami many times, hoping that something will happen and I shall be changed. So far, I do not see any change in me. I am as I was, a weakling of a man, and inveterate sinner, and he started weeping piteously. On this road, there are no milestones, replied Bhagavan. How can you know which direction you are going? Why don't you do what the first class railway passenger does? He tells the God his dismissal, locks the door, and goes to sleep. The rest done by the God. If you could trust your group as much as you trust the rival God, it would be quite enough to make you reach your destination. Your business is to serve the door and windows and sleep. The God will wake you up at your destination. An inmate of the asrama who had been serving Bhagavan for many years started visiting certain women in the town. Her relatives came to know of it and decided to catch and kill the man. One night they caught him at her house, bound him hand and foot and locked him up in a room, postponing the cutting of his throat until they had found a safe way to disposing of the body. Our man managed to escape and came running to the ashrama, pursued by his enemies. When he entered the gate, they gave up the chase. He entered the hall, trembling and fell on the ground, shouting, "Save me, save me." Bhagavan ordered the doors to be shut and said, "Don't fear, tell me what happened." After having been told everything, he looked at the culprit with understanding and pity and said reassuringly, "Don't fear anymore, go and sleep." From the next day, the man was at his work, and Bhagavan would not mention the matter at all. Everybody in the town came to know what happened. The asrama people requested Bhagavan to send the man away, for his presence would tarnish the good name of the asrama. Bhagavan called the man and told him in front of everybody, "You have done some wrong, but you were too foolish to keep it secret. Others do worse things, but they take care not to be caught. Now the people who were not caught want you to leave the asrama because you were caught. They will make your life miserable. You had better to stay outside for some time until things settle down." The man stayed with some devotees outside the asrama and came back after a few months. When people would complain to Bhagavan about some mischief or other done in the asrama, Bhagavan would say, "I have not come here to punish people. If I start punishing people, even a black robe would not remain in this place. People come here, each with his own purpose, and he may find his purpose fulfilled. Why don't you take care of your own purpose? Why do you pay attention to what others do?" When Bhagavan was still on the hill, a postcard came in which the sender wrote, "I am a poor elementary school teacher. My mother is old and my salary is so small that I cannot look after her properly. Kindly see that I get a rise." Bhagavan laughed and said, "Well, why not?" Another card came after some time in which he wrote, "By your grace, my salary was increased. Now there is a vacancy in a higher grade. If I am given that grade, I shall earn more and make my mother very happy." Bhagavan had a good laugh and said, "Good." Again after another thought, "My mother is bedridden and there is nobody to nurse her. If I could get married, my wife would look after her. But I am a poor man. Who will give me his daughter in marriage? And where shall I get the money for expenses? Bhagavan may kindly arrange." Bhagavan laughed and said, "Well, let it be so." After some months, another postcard came. "By your kindness, I was married quite easily. My wife is already with me. My mother wants a grandchild before she dies. Please provide." "Why not?" said Bhagavan. After some months, another God, "My wife gave birth to a child, but she has no milk for it. I cannot afford milk for the baby. Please get me a promotion." Then another God, "I got a promotion and an increment. The child is doing well. I owe everything to your kindness." Bhagavan remarked, "What have I done? It is this good karma that all goes well with him. After some days, another god, mother died. She worshipped you before her death. Well, said Bhagavan. After a month, another god, Swami, my child has died. Sorry, said Bhagavan. Another month had passed, and a god came saying, my wife is pregnant again. Then another god, my wife gave birth to a child, both died. Ram, said Bhagavan. Everything seems to be over. Then another god, due to family trouble, my work was very irregular, and I was dismissed. I am completely destitute now, Bhagavan said. Heaving a deep sigh, all that came has gone. Only his self remains with him. It is always like this. When all goes, only the self remains. Om Namo Bhagavate Ramana.
Vivek Chudamani, the crest jewel of discrimination. Not too far after Sri Ramana Maharishi arrived at Arunachala as a boy, sage he was, shown this text by one of his disciples, who in all likelihood asked him to elucidate certain points not understood. The Maharishi found the text so much agreed with his own experience that he made a Tamil prose rendering of Vivek Chudamani 580 Sanskrit's verses. The English translation of this work can be found in the collected works of Ramana Maharshi. Most of the serious students of Maharshi's teachings are aware of this fact. What is not so well known is that out of 580 verses in Vivek Chudamani, the Maharishi selected 10 that appealed to him most. These he translated and reset. They clearly mirror the Maharishi's own experience and provide direct guidance to mature seekers. Verses from Shankara's Vivek Chudamani, selected and reset by Sri Ramana Maharishi. Among all the means for liberation, preeminent is devotion, and the quest for one's own reality. The self is called devotion. The Supreme Self, eternal, indivisible, non-dual consciousness, the witness of Buddhi, and the rest is other than Sat and Asat, and is the ultimate significance of the notion conveyed by them, I, by the term I. It is the immediate reality, the bliss incarnate. The Supreme Self of pure consciousness, different from Prakriti and its modifications, shines as the I, the direct witness of Buddhi during the wakeful and other states, and lights up this entire manifestation of Sat and Asat. That which clearly manifests itself within during the wakeful, dreaming, and sleep states, which is directly perceived within as the I of consciousness, awareness, of continuous awareness, which perceives the ego, buddhi, etc. That are of diverse forms. And please, know thou this, thine own self, within the heart. By direct experience, know thou this own self within myself as this I, with the mind regulated and the intellect pure and clear thereby. Cross the boundaries, ocean of samsara, of which the waves are succession of births and deaths. Thy aim thus fulfilled, be established as the Absolute. In the shade of intelligence shines eternally Atma, the self-effulgent witness of all, making that thy lakshya, which is quite different from the unreal enjoyed by experience, through unbroken awareness as thy own self. Extremely subtle is the truth of the Self Supreme, and it is not discernible to the gross vision of the mind. It is knowable to the noble-minded, perfectly pure intellect through very subtle self-awareness during samadhi, the state of transcendental peace. When the mind, qualified thus through incessant practice, is merged in Brahman, then the samadhi, getting rid of savikalpa character, leads of its own accord to the experience of bliss, of oneness, or nirvikalpa samadhi. By the samadhi are destroyed all the knots of vasanas and all karmas is destroyed. There remains within and without, everywhere and at all times, the effortless manifestation of one's Swarupa, the Self. In the cave of Buddhi is the Supreme Brahma, one without a second, distinct from Sat and Asat. For him who abides in this cave as verily the Self, there is no rebirth.